that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 347th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey, me, and the astonishing Tom Fennell. In the flesh. Okay, I'm going to start out with my weekly ad. If you want to help Energy Week stay in existence, the only way it can be done is to help BCTV stay in existence, and you can go to BCTV and donate money. And it doesn't have to be a huge amount. Amounts could be as small as $1. We've had a couple of people give $5.
Okay.
Which is very, very nice. And if you want to be the first one to donate $1, you can do it. And of course, we will take any larger amount. What you do is go to BrattleBoroTV.org, go to the bottom of the screen, find the button that says Support Local Broadcasting, click on that, and then put in an amount of money and tell them that it'll be PayPal or some sort of credit card. And right below the amount of money, so far down the screen, well, of course it depends on the size of the screen, is a box that you can put in a comment. And what you do is say that this is supporting Energy Week. And we don't need a huge amount of money anymore, but donations don't come in fast.
Still need a few bucks.
Yeah. Anyway, that is that. I have to tell everybody what the show is all about. This is a collection of news items from my blog, and my blog is geoharvey.com, Geoharvey. I do it every day. I've done it every day since the 2nd of June 2012. Before that, I did it by email, but the blog itself was put up online on the 2nd of June. And I put up 10 to 15 articles each day, represented by a synopsis and a link to the original article. And we will start on the 21st of November, Thursday. We are recording this show on Wednesday the 27th because they won't let us into the studio tomorrow. My goodness.
Even if we bring turkeys, huh?
Even if we bring turkeys. Even if we are turkeys.
That would have been neat to have one.
Have one sitting there? Absolutely. Yeah. The way the Energy Week works is we normally record the show on Wednesday mornings, Thursday mornings. Today we're going to do it on a Wednesday because they won't let us in on Thanksgiving.
And the equipment can't deal with that.
The equipment can't deal with it, as we just found out. Everything in the studio just put up a sign that said we're going to wait until Friday. Okay, but it is Wednesday, and it is the 27th of November, and we're starting our show with news from the Thursday, November 21st. Normally I have about 10 to 15 items on my blog, geoharvey.com. And if you go to geoharvey.com and click on the calendar for November 21st, you'll find probably 15 items.
Why is this
which will include
both going together here.
Everything's funny today.
I want to get us both up here on the screen. I can get us up
there
on
you go.
2 screens, but
well,
no. Hold it. Nope.
No, go.
At least I got 2 different screens up there.
All right.
And if I push this,
there you go. See, it works. It works. Okay. Technology works sometimes. We're starting on the 21st of November. If you go to my blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com, and click on the 21st of November on the calendar, you will find about 15 items, which will include these 3 that are coming up. And let's put up a picture. Can we do that?
I think we can. We're going to try it.
Let's try it. Yeah, there you go.
And looks like a picture. Whoop.
You clicked twice.
There we go. I clicked twice. It's a habit.
It's a habit. Okay. This is an item from Utility Dive.
And that, in case you don't know it, is the U.S. Capitol.
It's the U.S. Capitol building where all those people get together and chat.
Well, shall we start?
Yes, absolutely. Go to it, Tom.
Presidential contenders join fellow senators in urging New England to speed energy transition. I could have been a contender.
I could have been a contender, but I wasn't. 7 U.S. senators from 4 New England states have urged the regional grid operator to speed the addition of clean energy resources and take a more active role in addressing climate change as well as accommodating state resource policies.
Well, the only senator from New England that didn't join these guys was Susan Collins from Maine.
Why?
Well, she's a Republican.
Well, that doesn't count. Man.
ISO, the Independent System Operator's focus on energy security, allows legacy generators to remain in place. What does that mean?
Old utilities.
Ignoring the benefits of, yes, old utilities. That's exactly what it means.
Old utilities is actually old.
Traditional utilities.
Old coal burning plants and things like that.
Generators, right.
Yeah,
those that are producing electricity. To remain in place, ignoring the benefits of clean energy and frustrating states' efforts to address climate change. That's not good news, but that isn't going to last.
No.
It's politics.
Yep. Move on?
I think so, yeah.
We have an item now from BBC, and I've got there we go. I've got a computer that I'm not familiar with here. Item from BBC.
From the BBC, this is a lot of images in this one. This is a good one.
Yes, it's a very good article.
A third of tropical African plants face extinction.
A third of the tropical African plants are on a path to extinction, according to a new assessment. Much of Western Africa, Ethiopia, and parts of Tanzania and the Democratic Republic of the Congo are the hardest hit regions, standing to lose more than 40% of the richness of plants.
Well, what the article says, and I'll read it quickly, the mountain forests in Africa contain many rare species threatened by deforestation, land use changes, population growth, economic development, climate change. Another third of the species are potentially threatened in the near future.
Yeah.
So there's some changes coming, and it's not good, I don't think.
I'm noting here that a lot of people believe that the Western Sahara was grassland until human beings brought goats into the region.
Goats it was, huh?
That's what I've heard.
Well, I'm sure that the Sahara at one time was all grassland. I know that.
Yeah.
But that was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
More than last week.
Longer than last week, yeah. I have seen problems in the Sahara region since I was a little kid, but you know. Okay, we have an item.
What's that? I think it's a 1,000-year-old man talking about the Sahara forest. And somebody says it's not the Sahara forest, it's the Sahara desert. It used to be a forest.
You know, there are places where you can find, not the Sahara, but one of the places I lived in the UK was in Devon, and there are places where there are local legends about forest areas that no longer exist.
Uh-huh.
And when there was an unusually low tide, somebody could see stumps out in a bay.
That's so, yeah.
And
so the bay was a forest at one time.
And as a matter of fact, Dartmoor apparently was a forest at one time. Not anymore. Okay, we have an item from Mother Jones.
Yeah, we got another picture.
And there is a
up.
Tesoro oil refinery. I have no idea where that.
Tesoro's in Washington.
Oh, okay. There you go. I was going to say I don't know where it is.
And we'll look at it for a little while.
Okay.
Soaring fossil fuel production is on track to blow past climate goals. That's not good news.
No, it's not. The world's top 10 fossil fuel producing countries are on track to extract more oil and coal by 2030 than scientists say the planet can handle without experiencing catastrophic warming, according to a report published on Wednesday. Now, I want to point out that we've got a couple of items that come later in this,
On very similar stuff.
but they have a very different message.
A little different message. Well,
So-
according to this one, there's a graph on this.
Yes.
And it shows fossil fuel CO2 emissions. And there's a big gap
Right.
in what they need to do to avoid global
Right.
warming and
Right.
what they're doing.
Right.
And it's scary.
Yes. Okay, we're up to Friday, November 22nd. So any of the next 3 articles, if you want to know about them.
Well, I'll read a sentence from the previous article.
Oh,
'cause
okay, go ahead.
It's not specific to it. Fossil fuels received a combined $5.2 trillion in entrenched government incentives across the globe.
Now you know
according to
why
the
we've got
IMF.
problems.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, these incentives, some of them are like 100 years old, but
Yeah.
and they're entrenched, so nobody, you just assume this
Yes.
is normal.
It's normal.
Well,
Okay.
let's move to Friday, November 22nd here.
Item here from Clean Technica.
U.S. shale boom may be winding down. What does that mean for America and for the world?
A cloud has appeared over fracking as the world price of oil trends downward. The fracking industry grew in 2018 but did not grow in 2019. Halliburton laid off 3,000 workers and dozens of fracking companies have filed for bankruptcy.
Well, we'll be touching base with that again
Yeah,
before
I
the
mean,
show's out.
it's
It's big news.
yeah, it's kind of ongoing, and many of the people in the world just don't know that this is what's going on.
Well, there's a quick takeaway from this one.
Yeah.
We've been ignoring the harm that all oil and gas does to the environment when it gets burned.
Yes,
The only sensible course of action is to eliminate oil, gas, and coal extraction altogether.
Yes.
So the earth can begin to heal itself
yes,
from the wounds inflicted by the fossil fuel industry.
yes.
And of course, we've got to do something about all those subsidies.
Well, one of the things that was interesting to me in this article was a number of these fracking companies that are going out of business, and they talked about there being more than 30 of them that have declared bankruptcy in 2019.
Well, a couple of things are happening. One of the things is the fracking industry is being very disappointed in the results.
Yes.
They're not getting out of fracking what they anticipated they were getting.
Yes. Yep. Should we go on?
Yeah, we got a nice picture coming up
We
here.
do indeed. This is, I think, just a really kind of stunning picture of solar panels on a Navajo.
Well, this is the Monument Valley, which is one of the most beautiful spots in the world.
Yes?
And it's pretty much all owned by the Navajo.
Right.
And I'm sure that this is kind of a specific picture because you're not going to be driving through that valley looking at
No.
solar. It's a very small
Yes.
development. It happens to be what is generating enough for the tribe to survive.
Right.
But they closed a big coal burning plant right on the edge of this valley,
Right.
and this is what's left.
Yes. And by the way, in case those things look familiar to people who are as old as I am, the Monument Valley was, in fact, one of the places that was used as a scenery for the movie Stagecoach.
Oh yeah, if you've seen a John Ford movie
Yeah.
with John Wayne in it,
Yeah.
you've seen the Monument Valley.
Yeah.
And it's just coincidental you should mention that. I was looking at a movie 2 nights ago
Yes.
called what was it, Once Upon a Time in the West.
Okay.
Okay, and about a third of the way into the movie, they drive through Monument Valley.
Yes.
And it's a long trip.
Yes.
And it's really quite beautiful.
Yeah, it is indeed. Okay.
But just a coincidence, though, as we're
Let me-
talking about Monument Valley, I'm looking at this.
Yes. Let me. Have you read the headline?
Not yet.
Okay.
As cold dwindles, Southwest tribal solar farms pump out power.
This is from UPI.com. New large-scale solar farms are bringing jobs to reservations and the first electricity to many families living on tribal lands in remote areas of the Southwest. The Navajo Tribal Utilities Authority brought online 2 solar projects with a total of 55 megawatt capacity over the last year. And, you know, some of this is going to people who have never had electricity
That's what the
before.
article says, yes.
Yeah.
They've never been able to put up electricity. Now they've got it.
Yep.
And the article had some pictures of utility workers from out of town coming in, helping them develop the infrastructure.
Right.
There's a quick takeaway here. We've talked about this one. Earlier this month, the Navajo Generating Station, which was the largest coal plant in the West, closed after 45 years.
Yes.
The demand for coal power was too low to sustain the operation.
Yes.
Okay, the two solar farms generate all the electricity used on the 17 million acre reservation.
Wow.
So they're generating all their own power from solar, and they closed down the coal plant. Selling renewable energy on a large scale to cities like Albuquerque and Los Angeles pays for the infrastructure to power up the homes that have been waiting decades for electricity, as you just mentioned. This is an interesting takeaway, an interesting quote. Tribal lands in the Southwest are the Saudi Arabia of solar because they're largely undeveloped.
Yeah.
And they are.
They are indeed.
So,
Okay, we've got an item here from Renews.
this is an interesting one.
It is indeed.
Barrick is a company, proposes a 16 gigawatt New England grid link. That's pretty significant.
And I'm going to say this because otherwise Tom will say it first. Anytime you hear gigawatt, that means big.
They should call them bigawatts.
Bigawatt.
Bigawatts, right.
Yeah, well, what do you do with terawatt? Okay. U.S. transmission developer Barrick has applied to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management to develop the Southern New England Ocean Grid, an offshore grid system off southern New England. It is designed to connect up to 16 gigawatts of offshore wind capacity to the mainland. That's a lot.
It's very, very big. I read, I think it's New York State has just announced they're going to open up a cable factory.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and Barrick is developing a system of cables on a continental shelf connecting existing wind lease areas via a common link to shore.
Yes.
An underground grid, if you will.
That's right.
Okay. Transmission lines would connect lease areas directly into Boston, Narragansett Bay, Massachusetts South Coast, and Connecticut to provide offshore wind-generated electricity to area residents. So they're getting on top of this thing. It's a whole new
It's
concept,
a whole
really.
new ballpark.
Oh,
It's just
absolutely.
entirely different. We are up to Saturday, November 23rd.
Yeah, we've got a picture coming
and we have a
up here.
picture of a child being threatened by large numbers of cops.
I can't help but
it's
believe
not
it.
exactly that, but
I can't help but believe it, but one of those cops is wearing a pair of pants that are too big for him.
all right.
Look at his left leg there.
Okay. Oh, you mean too long? Absolutely.
Too long, that's what I mean.
Yeah. Okay.
Sunrise Movement goes viral without Twitter ads, yet it still influences national narrative.
Well, this
You
is
got to
from,
explain what that means.
yeah, this is from Clean Technica. And let me read the short synopsis here. Climate action movement. The climate action movement is building around the U.S. and the world, in good part due to Sunrise advocacy. Sunrise is an organization. The word has spread without such things as insidious Twitter ads. The Sunrise movement is accomplishing a lot with little more than people power. They are not going on Twitter and a lot of, I don't know, they may be using some social media, but they're not doing much. They're doing this by
certainly
word of
not
mouth.
taking out ads on Twitter,
Yeah.
which they pay for.
Yeah,
I mean, if you just tweet, you don't pay for it.
but you take out an ad, you pay for
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
Which is that's how it works. I mean,
that's how it works. If I were president of the United States, I would ban the use of Twitter.
but this president likes it too
Yeah,
much.
the only problem with that is I can't ban private use. I can't ban state use. I can't ban corporate use. But by golly, the federal government is being run out of Twitter, it seems.
Well, a quick takeaway about the Sunrise. The Sunrise movement is a movement to stop climate change. The movement promotes a conceptual framework about fossil fuel billionaires' greedy grasp on energy networks.
Which is why they're not using Twitter.
How political power through a Green New Deal fostered by everyday people could break monopolies' hold, and that transition to 100% renewable must leave no one behind.
Well, I agree with
So
it.
the
Much of
sunrise
that.
movement, I think, is going to be important.
Yeah. The only thing is, I'm beginning to think that the Green New Deal will not be sufficient.
It may not be.
Yeah.
It may not be. Well, they're still talking about it, though.
Yep, they are indeed. Okay,
Well,
our
the
next
next one coming up,
our next one is from Clean Technica.
solar costs and wind costs so low, they're cheaper than existing coal and nuclear, according to Lazard.
Lazard's latest LCOE report, that is levelized cost of energy, says cheap energy from solar and wind are competing with existing coal and nuclear plants. It can be cheaper to build new wind and solar farms and use them than to keep existing coal and nuclear power plants going.
Well, they say something interesting here. Solar and wind aren't just cost effective when subsidized, they're cost effective when not subsidized.
Yes.
Despite more than a century of fossil fuel subsidies,
Yes.
which we've already mentioned.
Well, they're coming in very, very rapidly.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things to remember about them. Okay, should we move on or?
Well, again,
There's
one
more?
last sentence here.
Okay.
They have actually gotten so cheap that they are now computing with existing coal and nuclear power plants.
Yeah.
Which we've been talking about. They're closing these guys.
They're closing down plants because wind power or solar power is cheaper. Even backed up with batteries, it's cheaper in a lot of places.
Well,
Okay,
the times they are changing.
they are changing. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, we got a picture coming
We have
up
a
here.
picture, and this is an
See
item
if I can
from
get it up there.
Sci-Tech Daily. That is not Sci-Fi Daily, it is Sci-Tech Daily.
Tech Daily.
And by the way, both of those items are of intense El Nino.
2 different years.
2 different years. They don't show a light El Nino here. They're just showing.
These are
These
2
are the
years
tough
where
ones.
it was violent El Nino.
Yeah.
And that's what it says here. These are El Nino events. The one on the right is in 1997, and the one on the left is in 2015. Both extreme El Nino events.
I think you got them backwards. The one on the left is 1997.
Well, it said in the article the one on the right is 19.
The article had it backwards. I remember saying to that to myself when I read the article.
I think you're right. I'm trying. Well, there it is.
Yeah, there it is.
November
Okay.
1997.
Go ahead. Or should
New
I?
and strange climate pattern includes more violent El Nino swings.
Yeah. In the
The
industrial
article had it
age,
wrong.
in the industrial age, El Ninos have become more intense, standing to worsen storms, drought, and coral bleaching in El Nino years. A new study has found compelling evidence that the Pacific Ocean, Pacific Ocean, that the stronger El Ninos are part of a climate pattern that is new and strange. Now, what they're saying is this is a pattern in the climate that is causing a change in the ocean.
In the weather.
Y-
The climate is changing, but it's causing a change in the weather.
Well, El Nino's
Yeah.
causing it, but the climate is changing, which is causing the El Ninos to be worse,
change.
which is causing the weather to change worldwide.
Now, a quick
So-
rundown on what an El Nino is, because
Yeah.
I had to look it up myself just to refresh. Every 2 to 7 years in the spring, an El Nino is born when the swings of heating and cooling of equatorial Pacific waters swell into a long heat blob, which you see there in the picture. Okay? Typically peaking in the early winter. It blows through oceans and air around the world, ginning up deluges, winds, heat, or cold in unusual places.
Yes. Okay, we are up to Sunday, November 24th, with an item from CNN. And maybe you should put us both up.
I
Tom,
think
so
I was just going to do that.
people can see that we are, in fact, not just a couple of machines talking.
Well, it's the Harvard-Yale football game, which was delayed after students and alumni stormed the field to protest climate change.
The Harvard-Yale football game was delayed nearly 30 minutes after more than 100 students and alumni flooded the field at halftime to protest against the school's endowments from fossil fuels companies.
Well, the website has 2 videos.
Yeah,
One of them is that crowd assembling.
yeah,
And the other one is more advisory. It says what you can do,
okay.
okay, which
Yeah.
is an interesting video. And the students are demanding that our universities take responsibility for their role in perpetuating the climate crisis and climate injustice. They're calling on Harvard and Yale to fully disclose, divest, and reinvest their holdings in the fossil fuel industry.
Right.
Now, you don't realize how much these students or these schools are investing their endowments in fossil fuels.
Right.
So that's what this is all about. And we got
Okay.
another picture coming up
We
here.
do
This is
have a
kind of
picture.
interesting. This
And
is
this is an interesting item from Clean Technica.
Public-private partnership building net zero homes for low-income families in Rhode Island. And there's a picture of the homes. Cute little house.
In Rhode Island, a in Rhode Island, let me start again, a public-private partnership is building 5 new homes for low-income buyers that are designed to have no utility bills at all. The design is a project of the Rhode Island School of Design Architecture program. They actually have 2 of these, which is why that picture says Unit A at the top.
Yeah, it's slightly different. But
Slightly different.
they look alike until you see them side by side.
Yeah, and they're very similar, obviously.
That's a neat little house.
It is. These are not homes for rent. These are homes for sale to people with low income. And
Yeah, but they're selling them at attractive prices. They're offering these things for 140 grand. Okay, a typical house in Brattleboro is 215.
well, that may be attractive to some people, but it's out of my budget. Okay. The thing that they point out about these things is that when you buy a house, you don't just buy a house. You buy a tax burden, you buy a mortgage burden, but you also buy a utility burden.
Utility burden.
And
And
the
these things
utility
are designed to
burden is
eliminate
big,
that.
and they eliminate the utility burden. And when they say net zero, they mean the person who buys this house does not have to pay for electricity, does not have to pay for heat. So,
That's a good saving.
it's a big saving, that's right. And it also means that people are not subject to changes in the costs of fuel and things like
I'm
that.
going to put the house up again so you take a quick look at it.
Yeah.
This is a good pilot project.
Yes, it is.
And that's what it is. It's a pilot project.
Yep.
And I'd like to see it going on right here in Brattleboro.
Yep.
So let's move along.
All right, I have an item here from Antelope Valley News.
You do, huh?
I do.
It's
We
called
do.
Newsom halts hundreds of fracking permits. So we're going to find out in a second what or who Newsom is.
What or who? Okay. California Governor Gavin Newsom halted approval of hundreds of fracking permits until independent scientists can review them. The State Division of Oil, Gas, and Geothermal Resources announced it will not approve new wells that use high-pressure steam to extract oil from the underground. And
Well, they're looking at the damage that this is causing.
yeah,
And they're getting on ball. This high-pressure steam is a process that Chevron is using in California to extract oil, okay? And they have recently had a breakdown, I'll call it that, a disaster, which leaked more than 13 million gallons of oil and water in California. So they're getting scared.
yes.
And the process is different from fracking, which uses water. This uses steam.
Well, I want to point
Not
out
much
here,
different, but
there's 2 sentences in this synopsis, and they're not actually exactly the same. One of them is talking about halting fracking,
Yes.
and the other is talking about high-pressure
Yes.
steam.
Yes.
So we've got, basically, the state wants to close down the whole thing.
well, they're looking at the second-order consequences, and they're not good.
They're not. Okay,
Then we got another nice picture coming up here.
we have a nice
Let's
picture.
start
A
off with
nice
the
picture? I don't think that's a nice picture.
Well, let's get it up. see
It's
if
a
I can
picture
get it
one
up.
way or the other.
Well, I clicked it twice again.
And we are up to Monday, November 25th,
All day.
all day.
Yeah. Climate change. Greenhouse gas concentrations again break records. And I'm trying to look at that picture there. And I certainly understand what's on the right, but what's on the left?
I think that must be a bridge or something along those lines, a raised highway.
I couldn't figure it out.
Well,
It's irrelevant, really.
Yeah, atmospheric concentrations of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases once again hit new highs in 2018. The World
Not good.
Meteorological Organization says the increase in CO2 was just above the average rise of recorded over the last decade, along with other greenhouse gases.
Well, they explain that concentrations that they're talking about are what's left in the air after interactions between the atmosphere, the oceans, the forests, and the land.
Right.
So it's not just what they're putting back in there, it's what remains in there. Okay?
Yes.
What's permanently in there.
Yes.
Since 1990, there's been an increase of 43% in the warming effect of these gases.
Yes.
And the worst one happening is methane, which is now at 259% of the pre-industrial level. And we don't even talk much about that.
No, we don't, but it is, one of the things about methane is that it's far more powerful than carbon dioxide,
But it doesn't last as long.
but it doesn't last as long. in
But it
the
still
atmosphere.
lasts
It
100
lasts
years.
Yeah, for a long time. I think the half-life of methane in the atmosphere is something like 20 years, or I've forgotten. We
I've
can look
forgotten,
into that,
but yeah, it's still not a good thing.
No, it's not.
And nitrous oxide is another one in there, and
Right.
that's at 123%. And there's no sign of a slowdown, which is the bad news.
Yes. Okay, should we move on?
Yeah, I think we can.
We
I
have an
think we
item
can.
next from Renew Economy.
Renewable generation in the U.S. is set to surpass coal in 2021 for the first time.
It now seems likely that annual renewable energy generation in 2021 will surpass coal-fired output in the U.S. for the first time. Coal has been rapidly declining and renewables have been growing fast. It looks like they may be at least neck and neck for that year. My bet is they're going to be neck and neck for 2020. But,
yeah,
you know,
it's push and shove. There's an interesting article on an interesting website, lots of numbers. It's talking about a new model grid, okay, with distributed power. And here's what this is a takeaway. Coal and renewables, which they define as biomass, geothermal, hydropower, solar, and wind, okay, are rapidly heading in opposite directions in terms of market share. And as the article says, renewable generation in 2021 is predicted to be roughly 845 billion kilowatt hours versus 800 billion for coal. So the graphs will cross.
they will.
And we got another picture
we have a
coming
picture of the Walney Wind Farm. And you know, there's an interesting boat in that picture right in the foreground.
I'm pushing the wrong buttons here.
Did you notice this boat, Tom? It has two bows.
Yeah, it's a catamaran.
It's a catamaran.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing.
It's a power catamaran.
Well, it's part of it's a workboat.
It's a workboat.
It's a workboat.
They
It's
want
part
it
of
to be steady, and catamarans
Yep.
are steadier. So anyway,
And there's another one in the background there. That looks like the same kind of thing.
did you read the title already?
I didn't.
You didn't. Okay, this is from Renews.
Ørsted unveils a 5 gigawatt energy island vision. As we said earlier, gigawatts are bigawatts.
That's right. Ørsted plans to establish the island of Bornholm to deliver up to 5 gigawatts of power. It will be Denmark's first offshore cluster interconnecting 2 to 3 neighboring countries. The Danish company said the hub would potentially supply Poland, Sweden, and possibly Germany in addition to Denmark.
Well, I had to look it up on a map, and this Bornholm is a kind of a big rock in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
And it's closer to Sweden than it is to Denmark.
yeah. Well, most of Denmark is closer to Sweden than it is to Denmark.
Got a good point there. But anyhow, they're talking about an interconnector to Poland,
Yes.
which works both ways.
Of course, it
so
does.
It can ensure high security supply to both Denmark and Poland.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Interesting article.
Yes, it is.
So coal, this one's coming up. Is this the beginning of the end?
Yeah,
I
this
think
is
we know
from
the
the
answer to that
BBC.
one.
This year looks to be the largest. Looks to see the largest fall in electricity generation from coal on record. according to a report in the online journal Carbon Brief. It is projected to drop by 3%, which is a fall of 300 terawatt hours based on the energy sector data from around the world for the first 7 to 10 months of the year. Now, they're talking about world supplies of coal. We have been talking in this show about U.S.
Localized
supplies,
supplies,
but
yep.
this is worldwide, and this is really important because we've been seeing coal plants being built in Indonesia, in India, in China, and worldwide, they're not. Coal is not being used as much as it was.
Well, they're finding out that, well, I'll read from the article.
Yeah.
The economics of coal production no longer make sense in many parts of the world,
Yeah.
where it is simply cheaper to generate electricity from natural gas and renewables.
Yeah.
I mean, it is here.
Yeah.
Already,
and we
or
know
will
that
be.
it's better for people's health, and we also know there's other things here too. If you can generate renewable power locally, and you would have to import coal, or oil or gas, which is, for an example of a country that is like that is Japan. There is a strong reason that has to do with national security to use renewable energy.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We're right here in Vermont. We don't mind coal in Vermont. So
We don't.
If we use coal anywhere in the state, it's got to be imported.
That's right. And you know 118 Elliott?
Yeah.
Okay, the woman and man, the couple owns 118 Elliott. Lissa Weinman is the woman, and she was complaining rather bitterly when she bought that place because she's very into environmentally sound ways of generating electricity and so forth.
Well, it used to be, at least, maybe still is, coal.
No, it isn't anymore.
Okay, good.
They bought that place and immediately stopped using coal, but
I remember seeing the coal truck dumping coal into a hole in the floor.
She was buying it, the contract that she had, that she put a deposit on it, but with the deposit, she had to sign an agreement, and the agreement stipulated that she had to keep the pipes from freezing, which meant that she was putting coal into a coal burning furnace every day, and she did not like that at all. Lissa's an interesting woman, and that is an interesting place. There, it's a.
No, it used to be a laundromat.
It used to be a laundromat, and now it's. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's a meeting place for people that.
Well, it's more than that. I mean,
they have yoga and dance and
yeah, it's a community resource. Really,
it's a community resource, and last time I met. Congressman Welsh was in that particular place where he was talking. Yeah, it's this is an important item. Okay, so we're up to Tuesday, November 26th, with an unusual piece from Renew Economy, and it will need an explanation.
We've got a picture coming.
We do
up
indeed.
Let's see if
this
I
is
can't
one of
find
the
that
few.
picture.
I think this is the only picture like this we've had. Solar
panels at night.
Okay.
Interesting picture, and it's an interesting concept.
Yes.
Okay, solar farm helps balance the UK grid at night.
Now, I want to point out right from the get-go here that those panels are not generating electricity.
Good point.
Okay.
Not from the stars.
No, not from the stars. Life Source BP, which is a part of BP,
British Petroleum.
British Petroleum, said that a trial using one of its solar plants in East Sussex had successfully provided nighttime reactive power voltage support services to the electric network, a first for a solar asset in the UK. What it's called an inexpensive tweak to inverters can send the power back at a slightly different voltage to the grid.
Well, yeah, I had a hard time figuring out what was going on, so I had to get the article and read it.
I'm glad you did, because I couldn't understand it.
Well, the inverters are used in all these solar panels to turn DC from the panels into AC that they can pump into the grid.
Right.
And in this particular case, they're not using the panels, they're borrowing the inverters, which aren't being used at night.
Yes.
Okay, and they're using the capability of these inverters, which are complicated electronic things, okay, to tweak, to tweak
Voltage.
the voltage coming
Yeah.
from the grid from other sources, like wind, for example, so
Okay.
that it balances the grid better.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so if they had like a whole lot of wind power coming from over here, because it's not being used over here, the voltage tends to rise, and this is kind of smoothing all of that out.
Yes.
So
okay.
they're using the electronics.
Right.
Okay, borrowing it. It's really clever because they paid for it already.
Well, they said it would save hundreds of millions of dollars a year
Well, in order
if they could do this.
when they
widespread.
tweak that, yes, they're saving
A lot of
a
money.
lot of money.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, and this is an interesting one.
Back at the ranch.
Lightsource has started on a 200 megawatt solar farm near Wellington, New South Wales. And that's 40 times the size of the solar farm in Brattleboro.
Yes, it's big.
It's a big solar farm.
Yep. Okay. We have our next item is from Renews.
And this one is even more interesting. Wind Europe plots a 450 gigawatt European Union offshore goal.
To achieve the European Commission's target of 450 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2050 requires annual installation rates to rise from 3 gigawatts today to over 20 gigawatts in 2030, a report from Wind Europe says. This is a report that's going to be pretty easy to calculate. If they're going to get there, they have to do this. This study suggests that the bulk, 112 gigawatts, should be deployed in the North Sea, and then it goes on to talk about where the rest of this should be deployed.
By the way, 450 gigawatts, that's about 800 Yankees. Okay? And I'm not talking about the New York Yankees, I'm talking about the Brattleboro Yankees.
Vermont Yankee.
And they're
plant.
talking about 85 gigawatts in the Irish Sea.
Yep.
Okay? 83 gigawatts in the Baltic.
Yep.
70 gigawatts in the Mediterranean. This is a big projection here. The projects in the northern European waters would require less than 3% of the total available space of the sea in that region.
Isn't that amazing?
And Europe also needs to provide grid connections to more than one country.
But of course, we're seeing these grid connections built. We're seeing the
It's
connection
happening, yeah.
from France to Ireland.
It's happening.
From Norway to the
Absolutely.
Netherlands. You know, it is going in.
It's taken a while, but it makes sense, and because it makes sense, it's happening.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, we're right now going through a situation in Europe where we may be seeing a new. The European Union is going through political changes with elections and things like that.
Okay.
And a woman who might wind up being in charge of the whole thing is talking about putting the whole area into a Green New Deal.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, this is something I have absolutely no doubt, this business of addressing climate change is the biggest business opportunity that has ever happened.
I wouldn't argue that. I really wouldn't.
Yeah.
No,
and
it is.
What are we doing in the United States? We're trying to stick with old technology. And that is not going to work.
They got the money, and they've spent the money on oil and gas, and they don't want stranded assets.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
China, I just read in the news today, has the largest number of people in staffs for embassies and consulates and things like that of any nation in the world.
They do, huh?
China.
That's interesting.
Where have we gone?
What do you mean?
We're supposed to be making America great again.
Well, we're making China great again.
Well, China, was great once upon a time, and maybe it's time to become great again.
Well, they got an interesting system. It's a combination of capitalism and socialism.
They're the most capitalist people in the world.
Oh, yeah.
But they've got a command economy.
Yeah, bingo.
Very peculiar.
And they do a lot of planning.
And they claim to be communist, but they're obviously not communist.
Well,
They
let's
do a
come a
lot of
little
planning.
closer to home here. We got a picture of Block Island coming up.
We do indeed.
And that's really just a pilot program.
Well,
And
I
it's
think
just-
that's the best way to look at it. Yeah, it's a
there's
36
five
megawatt.
generators there,
Yeah.
maybe six.
There's
No,
six
there's
six
five of them.
6 megawatt generator. It's a 30
And you're looking at three of the five.
30 megawatt thing, and I think you're right. There's 5 and there's 6 megawatts each.
Well, the article's not about Block Island, it's about New York City.
That's right.
Putting New York City's waterfront at the heart of a renewable energy revolution.
This item is from Next City. Today, the East Coast looks to a pipeline of offshore wind energy projects or ocean-based wind farms that could generate more than 20 gigawatts of power within 10 years. Offshore wind energy could power up to 1 million homes in New York within 5 years. And in this, when they're saying New York, it's New York State. But the really interesting thing to me in this article was the effect this would have on jobs and business and such what.
You can't help it.
Yeah,
You can't help it.
yeah.
It's a very long and very interesting article, and it is very long.
And I should point out, everybody, Tom reads these articles very closely, much more closely than I do. So,
Well, I have to say something about it.
yeah,
Well, New York City consumes nearly 60% of the state's energy,
right,
okay? The bulk of which currently comes from natural gas and nuclear,
right.
okay? The East Coast wind farms could reactivate the city's ports, and there's a map about that in the article.
There is indeed. It's very interesting.
Shrink its carbon footprint and boost economic development. And right now they're talking about 2 projects that are in the works, okay? Empire Wind in New York Bay,
Right,
right by the entrance to New York City, and Sunrise Wind east of Montauk. It's really closer to Rhode Island,
yeah,
okay? And they're working on these already. I mean, these are happening. They're not in
Right.
process yet, but
and
they're
they've got a
happening.
lot that are not happening but are being.
Oh yeah,
developed anyway.
They finally awakened to the fact, hey guys, we can make some money here.
Yes,
And that's what this article's all about.
yes, it is.
The 2 projects are expected to be operational, at least 2, are by late 2024, and there's a map, okay? New York sits at the middle, and this is interesting, of a coastal corridor that stretches to Maine to North Carolina, where the shallow waters make it easy to install turbines. And the strong, consistent winds lead some to speculate that the East Coast could generate enough energy to power up the entire United States. And we've said that right here.
We have indeed, yeah.
Well, this is
And
the last article we have.
the next one,
I don't have a next one.
I do. You want me to read the title?
Yeah, I don't
It
have a
says,
next one.
Bleak outlook as carbon emission gap grows.
Say that one again.
Bleak outlook as carbon emissions gap grows. It's from the BBC.
You must have put that one in after I.
No, I put it in with the others. The
Well, I didn't get it.
The annual emissions gap report shows that countries will have to increase their carbon cutting ambitions 5-fold if the world is to avoid warming by more than 1.5 degrees, the UN says. The annual emissions gap report shows that even if all current promises are met, the world will still warm by more than double that amount by 2100. In other words, they're saying the promises that the Paris Agreement came up with are only enough to keep us to a rise of 3 degrees. And,
Which would be a disaster by
well,
itself.
1.5 degrees, I think, is going to prove to be a disastrous enough. I mean, we talked last week about the fact that the Federal Reserve Bank was counting damage done as a result of climate change at $100 billion a year in the United States in the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. And that's from less than 1 degree. And if we go to 1.5 degrees, my guess is that amount will double. It will be $1 trillion a year. And that amount of that amount of money going into damage from atmospheric carbon dioxide increases is when you consider that and you think about we could have double that amount of warming, and
Not good.
oh, this would be people are starting to talk seriously about our civilization collapsing.
Yeah, I've read stuff like that already.
Yeah, and there was an article in the news about that today. There was an article perhaps last week. And collapse of civilization doesn't mean everything disappears, but it does mean
For
that
some people it does.
well, for some people it does. And
They're talking about that.
you know,
I'm thinking maybe back to clubs.
I don't think we're going to go back to clubs, but I think we will in some places.
Yeah.
If we don't deal with this, we're going to have. 5 years ago, I was saying we can keep the damage to a number of people in the millions and dying as a result of climate change. And now I'm starting to think that's going to be in the billions. We're going to see possibly a 50% decline in the human population as a result of climate
Wow.
change. That's my thinking, my own thinking. And if that came about, I mean, just think about, we think about Hitler as being one of the most vile people in the world, in world history, because of the number of lives he took.
Mm-hmm.
We could say the same thing about Joseph Stalin, and on a much smaller level about Pol Pot and so forth, and
Mao Zedong.
Mao Zedong, and go down that list, and 100 years from now, 50 years from now, maybe even as little as 20 years from now, I think it's altogether possible that we're going to see Americans named in that list. And
I think it's inevitable.
I don't see how we can avoid it. I really don't.
Well, we know what we have to do, but we don't seem to have the will to try it.
No, I'm going to correct you there, Tom. We know what we have to do, but we're not willing to do anything but the opposite.
That's even worse than what I said.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's what it is. This is a pervasive problem that is in the, and this was done on purpose. That's the thing that's so sad about it. This I think is being done on purpose. We are.
Well, it is being done on purpose, but the purpose is to make money. But the purpose isn't to destroy the population.
No, it's not to destroy the population, but I think that
It's an inevitable effect.
It's an inevitable effect. Yeah, that's right. Their lives is more important than my money.
Yeah.
And if you take a person who is extremely wealthy, who says I'm worth $5 billion or $8 billion or whatever, who takes a position in support of that, what's he going to do with his money? How fast do you have to spend $5 billion when you're over 70 years old to spend it all?
It can't be done. I guess it could be done, but not through ordinary living.
No.
Basically, you'd have to throw it away.
Well, you'd have to throw it away. So there is our show, Energy Week, for this week. And
So according to the clock, we got 9 minutes left, but we
had a
had
technical glitch that
yeah,
left
so-
us without a computer for a few minutes, and the result of that was that our timing is a little off.
We still got a few minutes left, but
You think so? We can try.
well, I don't know. We've run out of things to talk about.
Why don't we just? We haven't run out. We've got lots to talk about.
I just don't have anything here.
You don't have anything there, but let's go back to that article about New York City, because the waterfront stuff in New York City, what we're talking about is resuscitating areas. When you think about it, when I think about what Brooklyn was like when I lived in Brooklyn,
Yeah.
which was like 1965 to 66, there were areas there where not only were there no jobs, there weren't even any people.
Yeah.
I mean,
there was parts of Brooklyn in the 60s that were really starving.
really starving. And right now, what we're talking about is not just gentrification. The area around Pratt Institute, which I went to, was gentrified, and the result of that is that we have BMWs today being parked outside of what were at that time abandoned warehouses. But this kind of thing is not going to be gentrification. This is going to be bringing real jobs into that area. And by that area, I don't mean the area around Pratt Institute in northern Brooklyn. What I mean is the area of New York City along the waterfront, which would probably include from Coney Island east, and you know, what's going to happen is these big offshore wind farms are going to bring in electricity to land, but somebody has to build the cables. Somebody has to build the stands that the wind turbines are building.
All of that has to be
The
done.
wind turbine blades have got to be manufactured. The nacelles,
All of those
turbines,
things
all
have
of
to
that stuff has to be made.
And as I said earlier, they're planning a submarine cable factory in New York
That's
State.
right. That's right. That's what they're talking about doing. And when that happens, it means that all of those jobs are going to be, or many of the jobs are going to be right on the waterfront, because they're going to be jobs that, you know, if you build a nacelle for a 10 megawatt turbine,
It's going to have to go in the water.
it's going to have to go in the water. That's why we don't have those things on land.
Yeah.
Those big nacelles, those 130 yard long wind turbine blades are not easy to move across the country, but they're relatively easy to move at sea. So what you do is you build them right next to the dock.
Well, the article mentioned that there's very few places where they could do this in the East Coast.
Yes.
That they don't have to contend with a bridge.
Yes.
You know, and I don't know whether that's a problem or not, but these things are pretty big, and
They're
maybe
pretty
they
big.
can't fit under
Well,
these bridges.
just look at the ships that they use for the jack-up ships. You know,
Yeah.
that they use for these.
Are they going to
when
fit under the bridge?
When
Well,
they
we don't know.
When they sail, they've got mast sections stored on the
Yeah.
deck vertically.
Yeah.
Which means that these things go, you know, 15 stories up in the air. Yeah, they have a problem with bridges. You're not going to build these things in Hartford, Connecticut, and
Well,
ship
they
them
did
down.
mention that Staten Island
Yeah.
is apparently the only place in the East Coast where they could build something like this, where they don't have to contend with a bridge.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Of course, they can build
They
them
could,
anywhere.
they could go to South Brooklyn, you know, like
South
Floyd
Brooklyn.
Bryant Field or something like
Yeah,
that.
they can go to the South Shore of Long Island. Actually, in many places of the North Shore, they could build these. They could build them in Connecticut or Rhode Island in some places that
In
are
the
along.
east side where they don't have to
Yeah.
deal with bridges.
That's right. But, you know, in some places, like, I don't know what you could do in New Jersey, because there you've got a problem with the water being shallow in a lot of places.
Okay.
You know, so I have the sense that you would not build these in Atlantic City. But anyway.
What would it do to tourism?
I don't know. I think it's probably time to go, Tom.
It probably is.
So we'll see you next week, or we hope that you will see us next week. We had 6 days this week. We're going to have 8 days worth of news next week, which
Yeah.
doesn't mean a longer show. It just means we've got slightly lighter coverage each day.
Yeah, a little bit less.
But we'll see you next
Well,
time.
what did we do? We normally do 21 items.
We normally
did about
do
24.
21. Today we did 20 out of 6 days.
Was it 20?
It was 20.
Okay, well, so we did two. We would have done 18 for 6 days. So
Yes,
we did 20.
I,
Okay,
I put in
that
a
makes
couple
sense.
extra. Next week there will be a couple of days when there's only 2. Have a good
Well,
week.
you'll come back.